Mr. and Mrs. A, faculty, friends, and students. This afternoon I'm going to be speaking about a very short period of time in Cardigan's history. In fact, I'm only going to talk about the first 2 years of our school's existence, the time when our school was nothing more than a casual thought until it opened its doors to students in September 1946. This was an extraordinary time of personal tragedy, laughably irresponsible financial overextension, courage, pride, perseverance, and ultimately nothing short of a triumph. Cardigan came to be from the actions of one man on a mission. The man was Harold P. Hinman, informally known as Hap. Hap was a New England native, Dartmouth graduate, and successful businessman in the granite industry. His home and office were in Barre, Vermont, but his heart was in Hanover, New Hampshire, with his alma mater, Dartmouth College. Hap was a happy, satisfied family man, married with a son and daughter, and professionally very successful. He had hopes for his son to take over the family business, and even as a teenager included the boy in sales trips, meetings, and other business dealings. Hap's world, though, was turned upside down in 1931, when his son suddenly died at just 16 years old. Understandably, a void was left in Hap, and he meant to fill it by devoting the remainder of his life to offering for other young men what he wouldn't be able to offer his own son. His mind went immediately to preparatory school, specifically one to prepare boys for Dartmouth. But on the advice of local Kimball Union Academy headmaster Bill Brewster, Hap was convinced that he would someday build a pre-preparatory school for grades 6 to 9. In 1944, the Point was owned by Dartmouth College, and the then president of the school, Ernest Hopkins, had plans to move the Thayer School of Engineering here to Canaan. However, Hopkins had acquired the land and the half-and-reform mansion, the building we now call Clark Morgan, for free, so he was open to selling the land, even at a low price. On April 1st, 1945, Hap and Bill Brewster came to an agreement with Dartmouth to buy the mansion and the 145 acres of surrounding land for $17,000. They made a $1,000 down payment and mortgaged the $16,000 with no idea how they would raise the remainder. Knowing they had to start somewhere, though, immediately after signing papers with the college, Hap and Brewster stepped into the Dartmouth National Bank and each deposited $100 in the name of the Cardigan School. Hap and Brewster began recruiting friends from all walks of life, captains of industry, educators, and lawyers, anyone who could help advance the school to becoming a reality. Hap looked for men of affluence, influence, and interest. Anyone lacking one must have a surplus of the remaining two characteristics. In only a month, Hap and Brewster had pulled together a group of 8 men, and they held their first meeting of the Board of Incorporators on May 10th, 1945. After making the first month's mortgage payment and receiving several modest donations from the first incorporators, Cardigan's bank account had a total of $233.18, just $33 more than Hap and Brewster's initial deposit. Lack of funds, though, didn't put a damper on Hap's vision or spirit. He wasted no time in calling architects, designers, and builders to move his project forward. By September 1945, he had assembled a master plan which included the following enhancements to the property: 4 new dormitories and faculty houses, renovations to the main building, a gymnasium and a crafts building, a tower, I rather like that idea, Mr. Day, if it's still on the docket, campus roads and a boathouse, landscaping and miscellaneous improvements, all totaling about $500,000. With $200 already in the bank, though, Hap and Brewster needed to raise only a little more than $499,000 more to realize their dream. All through this, though, Hap seemed oblivious to the obstacles against him. At the second board meeting, some incorporators were beginning to get cold feet, suggesting that Hap was moving too quickly and taking unnecessary risks. "Hell's bells," Hap retorted. "That kind of talk will get us nowhere. You fellows need more faith, more vision. These plans represent the goals towards which we all must strive. But you need to get out there and work." Encouraged and with renewed morale, the board moved forward, fully intact, and met once again on October 13th, 1945. That's right, they met exactly 71 years ago today, and it was on that day that they decided to rename their fledgling school from the Cardigan School to Cardigan Mountain School. They committed to opening enrollment for the 1946-47 academic year, set tuition at $1,100, and if they could enroll 35 boys, they would fulfill their financial obligations and have money in the bank for further development. The first boy to enroll was named Russell Thomas Chase from Old Lyme, Connecticut. Perhaps, though, as a sign of struggles to come, Russell withdrew and never attended. In fact, only 17 boys attended that first year. Hap's optimism alone couldn't raise the capital to open the school on the Point, so the incorporators had to scramble to find another suitable temporary location. They decided to purchase something that was move-in ready, that an inn or a boarding house would have to do. At the turn of the century, believe it or not, Canaan was actually something of a happening town. There were tourists who summered on the lake, and our location was a convenient stopping point for travelers on their way between Montreal and Boston. As automobiles advanced, though, towns like Canaan became less relevant, and by the 40s, the inns that used to line Canaan Street were struggling. The incorporators seized the opportunity to buy one of these buildings, a Greek Revival stagecoach tavern built in 1798 called the Lucerne Inn, known by locals as the Lodge. The price was right, $15,500, but it's $15,500 that nobody had. Again, they made a $1,000 down payment and mortgaged the remainder at 5%. Though the school was overwhelmed with debt, unable to use the location they actually wanted, and Hap was on thin ice with many of his fellow incorporators, this represented a glimmer of hope. "We had a building," he said, "with 34 rooms, furnished with beds, mattresses, cooking utensils, a baker, a stove, and an electric refrigerator, almost in the twinkling of an eye. Each and everyone connected with this proposition felt he belonged to something concrete." Classes began on September 17th, 1946, and in the spring of 1947 we graduated 7 boys and steadily grew year after year to become what we are today. Robert Hopkins, the author of Cardigan's written history, wrote, "Hap Hinman faced innumerable problems. There was never a moment where Hap could retire at night feeling the school was financially ahead, and it has taken little research to make one wonder how he had the courage to go on." Considering the school's eventual success, Hopkins continues in reflection. "The perspective with which the passing of time gives an operation, such as starting a new school, lends humor to telling its story, and, to an extent, replaces the grimness of the situation at the time." In short, Hopkins implies that the trials and tribulations that Hap endured, the sleepless nights, the trouble at the bank, the discouraging words from the people closest to him, even the death of his son, all of this he overcame with immeasurable courage. After a lifetime of hard work, Hap was able to look back with pride in what he had built, forget the hardships, and smile at his successes. In 1997, the band Harvey Danger sang, "If you're bored, then you're boring." C.S. Lewis had the same thought, but ever the optimist, he approached it from a positive angle. In the 3rd installment, in the Chronicles of Narnia, The Voyage of the Dawn Treader, the brave mouse Reepicheep says, "Extraordinary things only happen to extraordinary people. Maybe it's a sign that you have an extraordinary destiny, something greater than you could have imagined." Hap's life and his Cardigan story should be a lesson to us all. Make friends with people who challenge you, but stand up to yourself when you know you're right. Be courageous and take risks, and every now and then, spend a little bit too much money. You'll be okay, and in the end, when you're old, you'll laugh about what you've learned. Most importantly, though, if you want to live a life like Hap's, one worthy of being remembered, have more faith in yourself, more vision, make goals, and get out there and work. Thank you, boys.